never thought a single text could make a whole life feel rearranged, but the message blinked on my screen like it was both gentle and final. You won't be joining us. My wife prefers to keep it only her family. And the sentence landed in my chest with the weight of something I had carried alone for years. I had been at the kitchen table only hours before, my reading glasses perched on the tip of my nose, labeling tiny zippered bags of sunscreen by grandchild, folding souvenir keychains that said, Aloha and Grandma loves you, imagining the sound of little feet on sand and the way James used to laugh when the sun caught his hair. These small, exact acts of love had been my map to this trip. The house hummed around me. The fridge was the only other voice. When the phone buzzed again with, "It's simpler this way," I did not reply. I watched the glow die on the screen and let the quiet answer for me. It had not come as a sudden storm but as 1,000 small erasures. Holidays hosted elsewhere, eyes that slid past my stories, photos taken that conveniently left me out. Still, I never believed Nathan would help build that wall. There are memories so tender you think they are anchored forever. A second-grade drawing where he gave me a cape and wrote, "My mom saves the day," tulips he used to bring each March, a Mother's Day card that made me cry. Now those anchors look different. Sitting with my old laptop, I opened the folder labeled Hawaii Travel Fund and saw the number that held 3 years of quiet sacrifices, $21,763 and change, envelopes of tens, furniture sold, nights tutoring until my eyes burned. Every small refusal of comfort turned into this one bright promise. For a long minute shame came first, the soft, burning kind that asks how you could have been so naive. Then something steadier rose. Clarity, not revenge. And I began to make a different list. Names of women who had been invisible for too long, people who deserved to be held. The cursor hovered over the button that could pause everything. And in that breath between heart and hand, I chose not to beg for a place in a picture that had already been redrawn without me. The morning after I returned from Hawaii with the other women, my chosen family, the house felt different. Not in the way spaces feel empty, but in the way they feel full for the first time. I walked from room to room slowly, touching the backs of chairs, tracing the edges of picture frames, feeling the echo of something soft inside me, something I hadn't felt in years. Belonging. Not belonging to someone, but belonging to myself. The sunlight poured into the living room in long, warm strips across the carpet, the same way it used to when James would read the newspaper on Sundays. I stood there a long time, letting the light rest on my face, pretending for a moment that he was still here, still teasing me about burning toast, still humming under his breath when he thought I wasn't listening. And for the first time since he died, I didn't feel the sharp grief of his absence. I felt gratitude for his presence, in memory, in legacy, in the quiet courage he had left in me. I poured myself a cup of tea and sat on the porch, where the air smelled faintly of lavender from the candle I had brought back. Somewhere in the distance, a lawnmower buzzed, kids laughed on bicycles, life moved the way life always does, steady, indifferent, and beautifully unaware of who has been broken or rebuilt. And maybe for the first time I didn't feel like I was watching life from the outside. The phone vibrated beside me. Another message from Nathan. Shorter this time. "Mom, just tell me you're okay." For a moment, I let the words sit on the screen. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt in the way I used to be. But I wasn't ready to reopen a door that had taken me years to close. And there was something about his message. Not apologetic, not accountable, just uncertain. He wanted reassurance, not reconciliation. I placed the phone face down and breathed. Healing does not require explaining things to people who refuse to understand. Inside, the wind shifted the edge of a photo frame on the wall. It was a picture of Nathan at 6 years old. Cheeks round, hair sticking up like a dandelion puff, grinning with the kind of innocence that makes you believe nothing in the world could ever go wrong. I stood there, staring at that frozen smile, feeling the tug of two versions of motherhood. The one where he was small enough to sit on my lap, and the one where he stood tall enough to dismiss me without flinching. But even then, even in the memory of what once was, I didn't feel anger. Felt clarity. Love does not vanish. But sometimes it redirects. I walked to my desk and opened the notebook that had become my sanctuary. The Forgotten Women. 6 names written in careful ink. And 6 memories attached to each name from the trip. I added another page titled, Next Year. And under that I began to write. A road trip along the California coast. A winter cabin in the mountains. A long weekend retreat with journaling and ocean walks. A sunset boat ride, because Beverly said she'd never seen dolphins in real life. A photography day for Lucille, who always wanted to learn how to shoot landscapes but never had the time. The list grew longer, and with every line I wrote, I felt a little more alive. The world had spent decades telling older women to shrink, to be grateful for scraps, to fade quietly into corners. But we didn't fade. We were simply waiting for a place where our voices wouldn't echo into emptiness. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. It was my neighbor Marjorie, widowed 3 years ago, always polite, always quiet. She held a small plate of lemon squares, her hands trembling in the way hands do when they carry unspoken stories. "I saw your lights on," she said softly. "Thought you might want company. Or maybe I did." I invited her inside. She sat at my table, eyes lowering to the framed photo of James that still sat in the center, lavender candle behind it. "You went somewhere, didn't you?" she asked, her voice curious but gentle. "You look lighter." I smiled, feeling something warm rise in my chest. "Yes," I said. "I went exactly where I needed to." She hesitated, then asked quietly, "Do you think, next time maybe I could come too?" The vulnerability in her voice cracked something open inside me. Another reminder that invisibility isn't a single woman's burden. It is a quiet epidemic among those who have given everything and received silent rooms in return. "Yes," I said without thinking twice. "Next time you're coming." Her eyes filled with tears. She tried to blink away. Sometimes healing for one woman becomes permission for another. That afternoon, I walked to the garden behind my house, the one James used to tend. The roses were blooming in wild, messy chaos, as if they had grown without rules, without direction, just pure instinct for sunlight. I knelt beside them, touching a petal that felt impossibly soft for something grown from thorns. Life is like that, I thought. Softness grown from hardness. Strength shaped by wounds. Beauty rising not despite pain, but through it. My phone buzzed again. This time a voice message from my granddaughter Olivia. Her tiny voice, confused and sweet. "Grandma, when are we going to see the sea turtles?" The question pierced me in a place deeper than any of Nathan's words ever had. For a moment I closed my eyes and breathed through it. The children were innocent. They hadn't chosen exclusion. They hadn't written the text. They were simply caught inside the choices of adults who had forgotten how to honor the hands that raised them. I replayed the message. Once, twice, a third time. Each time it softened me. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But someday I would take her to see the sea turtles. On my terms, in my way. In a story shaped by truth rather than obligation. Because forgiveness is not letting people hurt you again. Forgiveness is choosing not to let their actions shrink your capacity for love. As the sun lowered, casting long shadows across the yard, I walked back inside and stood by the window. The wind chime rang softly again, that same delicate note James loved, and in that sound I found a clarity I had been aching for. I didn't lose a family. I left a dynamic that no longer valued me. And in leaving I found something better, myself. That night, I lit the last lavender candle beside James's photo. The flame flickered, steady and golden. "I'm not the same woman I was," I whispered into the quiet. "And I'm not sorry for that." Outside, the stars hung low, bright, unashamed. And for the first time in a very long time, felt like one of them. By the time their departure morning arrived, the truth inside me had gone quiet, not wounded anymore, just watchful, the way the ocean looks calm before the waves turn. I opened the banking app before breakfast, not out of anger but out of clarity, and there it was. 6 linked cards humming with confidence, ready to pay for their week in paradise on the assumption that I would keep financing a seat I was never meant to sit in. My finger hovered over the freeze toggle, a small blue switch that could redraw every line they had erased me from, and this time I didn't second-guess myself. But I didn't press it yet. First, I wanted to see if there was even a flicker of awareness left in them, even a single thread of conscience. So I sent one gentle message, soft as a whisper. If the kids need anything for the flight, let me know. The message was read. And ignored. Again. That silence was the final confirmation. Not a misunderstanding, not a stressful moment, but a choice. A deliberate, practiced, comfortable choice to take everything I gave and pretend I didn't exist. And in that moment, something inside me stopped reaching. My hand steadied, slow and sure, as I turned on the freeze. Transaction lock activated. The words glowed on the screen like the cleanest truth I had read in years. No announcement. No warning. No explanation. Just alignment. 2 hours later, while I sat with peppermint tea cooling beside me, the chaos began on their end. A text from Nathan. Mom, card declined. Can you check? I didn't answer. Then another. They're saying funds unavailable. Still nothing. The calls came next, 1, then 5, then endless. Tanya's voice sharp in the background, the kids getting restless, airport workers repeating. I'm sorry, the card isn't going through. I imagined them standing there, scanning and re-scanning plastic that suddenly held no power, realizing too late that generosity has limits when respect is gone. By the time the resort emailed booking cancellation processed by account owner, my travel fund had already begun to refill itself, refunds arriving like pieces of a story coming back home. And I felt no guilt, no triumph, no bitterness. Only peace. A peace shaped by boundary, by truth, by finally choosing myself over the role they had forced me into. While they scrambled at the airport trying to salvage plans built on entitlement, I opened a new spreadsheet titled, Those Who Deserve to Be Seen. One by one, I wrote the names of women who had lived lives of giving without ever being honored for it. It was in that moment, not when the card declined, not when they panicked, but when I wrote those first names, that I realized the story was no longer about what they took from me. It was about what I was finally giving to myself. Once the refund settled back into my account and the noise from their frantic calls faded into the background, I began planning a different kind of trip, one built not on obligation or performance, but on gratitude and gentleness. It started with 6 simple phone calls to women who had lived too long in the shadows. Carol, who hadn't left the state in 20 years. Beverly, who had spent her life cleaning up after others and rarely been invited anywhere she didn't have to work. Frances, who still carried grief like a second heartbeat. Nora, who once whispered that the worst part of aging was becoming invisible. Lucille, who had never seen the ocean. And Doy, who had helped me more times than she ever admitted. Each conversation began the same. A hesitant hello, a stunned pause, and then tears that sounded like hope remembering itself. The bookings were made under my name alone this time. Every room chosen with intention, every detail meant to comfort rather than impress. When we arrived at the villa, perched above a turquoise ocean that shimmered like it had been waiting for us, the air itself felt softer, as if welcoming women who had been overlooked their entire lives. I unpacked James's framed photo, the walnut one that deepened in color each year, and placed it on the dining table. No one asked me to move it aside. No one rolled their eyes. Instead, they smiled real, warm, understanding smiles, the kind of smiles that say, we see you. That first night, under hanging lights swaying in the Hawaiian breeze, we toasted with cheap wine that tasted like freedom. Carol kept refilling everyone's glass as if abundance were her personal rebellion. Beverly sighed, leaning back in her chair, saying it felt like the first place she'd ever been where she didn't have to clean after anyone. Frances cried when she saw the moonlit view from her window, whispering that she wished her younger self had known joy could still find her. And I realized as laughter filled the villa, deep, full, unfiltered laughter, that I had not just taken these women on vacation. I had brought them somewhere they could finally rest. We lit candles each night beside James's photo, each flame carrying a story. The memory of a husband lost too soon, a child who stopped calling, a life spent giving without being thanked. The air around us filled with something I hadn't felt in years. Not performance, not forced harmony, but presence. True, uncomplicated presence. We walked the shore barefoot, the waves curling around our ankles, the moon painting every wrinkle silver. And as we moved quietly across the sand, I saw what I had been searching for all along, belonging that wasn't requested or earned, but simply given. In those moments, candles glowing, soft voices blending into the ocean's hum, I understood that the trip I had envisioned for my old family had never been meant for them. It was meant for these forgotten women, and for the woman I had forgotten I could be. The kind who is seen, the kind who is chosen, the kind who finally realizes she doesn't need permission to take up space in her own life. 3 days after we returned from Hawaii, with the scent of plumeria still clinging to my clothes and James's framed photo resting softly on my dining table, the email from Nathan appeared. An attempt not at healing but at negotiation. "We're back, things went wrong. Maybe we messed up. Could you refund the deposit we gave?" The words were wrapped in half apologies and excuses, with Tanya's stress offered like a shield, but the truth pulsed beneath every line. They didn't want resolution. They wanted reimbursement. They wanted my sacrifice to remain theirs, even after erasing me from the trip. I read the email 3 times, each time feeling less of the ache I once would have carried. I opened my banking app and looked at the history. Every payment labeled with my name, every expense traced back to my sacrifices. There was no deposit from them. No shared contribution. Only the quiet assumption that mothers are lifelong banks with no closure date. For a moment I imagined writing back, explaining the pain, the dismissals, the erasure. But if a person must have betrayal explained to them, they were never capable of understanding it in the first place. So I closed the laptop gently and made myself a glass of iced tea, letting the ice crack softly as it settled. A sound that felt like release. Outside, the wind chime James had installed years ago sang a delicate note, and I stood there listening, realizing I no longer needed to defend my choices or justify my boundaries. Peace doesn't come from being included by the wrong people. It comes from choosing the right ones. I remembered the villa nights. 6 women laughing with the kind of joy that doesn't need an audience, passing bread around the table as if they were handing each other pieces of healing. I remembered the lavender candle burning beside James's photo, every woman offering a truth they wished someone had told them at 30. "You matter. You can rest. You are not a burden." Those words had healed something in me I didn't realize had been bleeding for years. And as I stood at the window looking out into my yard, I understood something simple and clean. I didn't need Nathan's apology anymore, because I had already given myself closure. The trip I paid for had finally become what I intended, not a gift to people who saw me as a convenience, but a sanctuary for those who knew the quiet ache of being forgotten. And the money they asked me to return, it stayed with me, not out of spite but out of principle. I no longer fund disrespect. I no longer bankroll my own erasure. My love will never again be a service they assume is free. In the soft breeze of that afternoon, I felt lighter than I had in decades. I had walked away from the version of motherhood that demanded endless giving without acknowledgement. I had stepped into something different, a truth shaped by boundary, dignity, and new beginnings. And in that quiet moment, I whispered to myself the words that had taken a lifetime to learn. Kindness is not weakness. And love without respect is not love at all.